the family secret that shocked Taiwan, the story of Lin family. It started as a story of love and success, a family bound by devotion and ambition, but behind closed doors, betrayal, greed, and unimaginable tragedy tore them apart. This is the shocking story of the Lin family, a tale that gripped Taiwan and left the world stunned. Stay with us as we uncover the dark secrets that unraveled a seemingly perfect family and how 6 siblings rose from the ashes of heartbreak to rewrite their legacy. If their story moves you, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps us tell stories that matter. Love stories often begin with chance encounters, but few unfold into tales as complex as that of Lin Dasheng and Guo Fumei. In the sun-drenched streets of Taitung, where mountain mists meet ocean breezes, their paths crossed at a modest elementary school. She, a newly graduated teacher from the prestigious Hualien Normal School, and he, a humble substitute instructor with dreams larger than life itself. Fu Mei wasn't just any teacher. She carried the weight of her family's reputation in every step. The Guos were among Taitung's elite, their name whispered with respect in local circles. Yet when Dasheng entered her life, status melted away like morning dew. Their souls resonated with an uncanny harmony, 2 minds that found in each other a mirror of their own aspirations and values. Their courtship challenged social conventions, but Dasheng was determined to prove his worth. In an unprecedented gesture that would later seem prophetic, he presented her family with a unique prenuptial agreement, a promise that their daughter would never need to shoulder household burdens. It was more than a contract. It was a declaration of devotion that won over even the most skeptical hearts. The years that followed painted a portrait of domestic bliss. As their family grew to include 6 children, Dasheng transformed himself from a teacher into an entrepreneur. Their journey took them from Taitung to Kaohsiung, then to Taichung, before finally anchoring in Taipei's Nangang district. Each move marked a step up the ladder of success, perfectly timed with Taiwan's economic renaissance of the 1980s. Riding the wave of the nation's growing wanderlust, Dasheng's business acumen shone. From his humble beginnings as a coach driver, he built an empire of tourist transportation companies. Through strategic partnerships and relentless innovation, his ventures flourished, bringing newfound wealth to his growing family. Yet beneath this tapestry of success lay a shadow from the past. Fu Mei carried a childhood wound, a seemingly innocent fall from a swing that would eventually steal her sight. A hidden blood clot, pressing against her optic nerve, gradually dimmed her world until darkness claimed both eyes. The vibrant teacher was forced to retreat from her beloved profession, finding new purpose within the walls of their home. The dynamics of their household took on a unique character. Fu Mei, though blind, ruled with firm maternal guidance, while Dasheng emerged as both father and domestic guardian. The image of him doing laundry on their balcony after midnight business meetings became a family legend. He mastered the art of being everywhere at once, signing school documents, dispensing allowances, and attending to countless domestic details with meticulous care. Their story appeared to be a testament to love's ability to overcome all obstacles. Yet, as with many tales that begin in sweetness, darker currents stirred beneath the surface, currents that would eventually transform this saga of devotion into something far more complex and tragic. The year 1984 marked the beginning of their family's unraveling, though it started with something as innocent as the aroma of home-cooked meals. Lin Zuoxian, the eldest son, returned from high school one day to find an unfamiliar sight, their dining table laden with steaming dishes, a stark contrast to the takeout containers that had become their norm since his mother's loss of sight. The scene before him stirred memories of happier times when family dinners meant more than just sustenance. Initially assuming they'd hired household help, Zuo Xian eagerly took his place at the table. But his contentment was short-lived. Between mouthfuls, he caught sight of his mother's face, her unseeing eyes carrying an expression he'd never witnessed before, a mixture of dignity and deep pain. Then she appeared, a young woman emerging from their kitchen with the confidence of someone who belonged there. But it was her casual reference to Fu Mei as sister that sent a chill through Zuo Xian's spine. His mother, despite her blindness, maintained her composure with remarkable grace, urging everyone to continue their meal. Later that evening, through the gap in his parents' bedroom door, Zuo Xian witnessed a sight that would haunt him. His strong-willed mother had bowed in defeat, weeping silently in the darkness. Li Yuegui was her name, 18 years Dasheng's junior, and far more calculated than her youthful appearance suggested. As an accountant in his company, she hadn't simply stumbled into their lives, she had orchestrated her arrival with precision. She had studied Fu Mei's blindness not with sympathy, but as a weakness to exploit, methodically weaving herself into the fabric of their family. Da Sheng's transformation was gradual, yet devastating. Fu Mei's silent acceptance of her situation, born from her physical limitations and concern for her young children, only emboldened him. What began as occasional visits from Yue Gui evolved into something more brazen. Initially, Da Sheng maintained some pretense of discretion, renting an apartment for his trysts, but soon even that facade crumbled. The changes rippled through their daily lives like poison. Da Sheng's absences grew longer, days stretched into weeks. The small gestures that had once defined his devotion vanished, unsigned school contact books piled up, and the regular flow of household money became erratic. Their home, once a sanctuary of love and security, transformed into a battlefield of silent tensions. In a heart-wrenching act of desperation, Fu Mei offered up her own bedroom to Yue Gui, hoping this final sacrifice might keep her husband present in their children's lives, but this concession only accelerated their family's dissolution. Yue Gui seized control with ruthless efficiency, establishing herself as the new authority in a house she had no right to claim. For Zhuo Xian, watching this domestic coup unfold was unbearable. Each day brought fresh wounds as he witnessed his mother's dignity being stripped away piece by piece, while the intruder claimed ever more territory in their once happy home. The suffocating atmosphere of betrayal and silent suffering pushed him toward a breaking point, forcing him to confront a reality no child should ever face: the systematic destruction of their family by someone his father had chosen to love. Something snapped inside 15-year-old Zhuo Xian that day. Drawing on courage he didn't know he possessed, he confronted his father about the family's deterioration. But Da Sheng's response shattered what remained of their relationship. "If you're so capable, stop using my money." The words, delivered with a sneer, struck deeper than any physical blow. In that moment, the hero of his childhood transformed into a stranger wearing his father's face. With nothing but his ID card and a few coins of allowance money in his pocket, Zhuo Xian made the kind of decision that changes a life forever. He walked away from both school and home, choosing the uncertain streets of Songshan district over the certainty of watching his family crumble. The concrete sidewalks became his bed, empty alleyways his shelter. Hunger eventually drove him to take work as a newspaper delivery boy, his days beginning in the pre-dawn darkness while the city still slept. Through a labor agency, he drifted between factory jobs before finding slightly more stable work as a grocery store clerk. The streets had their own education system. Without school to anchor him, Zhuo Xian found himself drawn into a local gang. His pain and anger found release in street fights, each bruise a badge of belonging he never found at home anymore. It took a particularly violent brawl and a night in a police station for reality to catch up with him. When officers contacted his school principal, it was his teacher's compassionate intervention that helped him see a way back to education, pulling him from the brink of a very different life. But returning home meant facing a new tragedy. The familiar door opened to emptiness, and days of searching led him to a sight that broke his heart anew. His family crammed into an illegal structure beside a beef noodle shop. Their new home was barely habitable, walls thin as paper, a ceiling that forced them to stoop, and not even basic bathroom facilities. It was shelter reduced to its most desperate definition. When his mother opened the door, her silence spoke volumes. No reproach for his disappearance, no anger at his abandonment, just quiet acceptance that made him collapse to his knees, sobbing. Through his tears, questions tumbled out. How had they fallen so far? Where were his father and sisters? The truth was a bitter pill. In his absence, his father's business empire had crumbled like a house of cards. A treacherous business partner had absconded with company funds, triggering a cascade of failures across all their ventures. But it was Da Sheng's response that revealed his true character. He fled to Kaohsiung with Yue Gui and two of the daughters, leaving his blind wife and 3 remaining children to face the wolves of debt alone. Fu Mei's situation seemed impossible. A blind woman with 3 young children, abandoned to face aggressive creditors. Her own family, once a pillar of Taitung society, had suffered their own reversals of fortune, and could offer no help. Yet somehow, through a patchwork of neighborhood kindness and church charity, combined with her eldest daughter and son working whatever part-time jobs they could find while continuing their studies, they survived in their makeshift shelter. It wasn't living, not really, but it was survival. And in those dark days, survival was victory enough. What struck Zhuo Xian most wasn't the poverty, it was his mother's dignity in facing it. She carried their circumstances not as a burden, but as a challenge to be met with quiet determination. In her blindness, she saw more clearly than many with sight the path forward lay not in bitterness, but in holding what remained of their family together. Zhuo Xian's return home marked what seemed to be a turning point for the family. Beyond resuming his studies, he shouldered adult responsibilities, working part-time while navigating the complexities of social assistance applications. Their efforts bore fruit when they qualified for public housing, a modest 890 square foot apartment that, at $8,000 monthly, offered them proper cooking and bathing facilities. It wasn't luxury, but it was dignity restored. In their small apartment, the children and their mother carved out a semblance of peace. Though the absence of their father and two sisters left an aching void, they dared to believe in better days ahead. But fate had different plans beginning on December 10th, 1984, when Da Sheng materialized from his 6-month absence like a ghost from their past. He approached Fu Mei with talks of returning to Taitung, spinning stories of visiting their parents and securing loans from her relatives to rebuild his business. For Fu Mei, whose heart had never truly accepted their separation, his return seemed like an answer to countless silent prayers. Like a bird welcoming its mate back to the nest, she rushed to pack her bags, her blind eyes unable to see the shadows in his intentions. The children's joy at their father's apparent reformation was palpable. What better birthday gift for their mother than the restoration of their family? While Lin Zuoyi prepared for his graduation trip, his siblings eagerly planned a surprise birthday celebration for their mother's return. None could have imagined they were witnessing their final moments with her. The first signs of trouble emerged when Zuo Yi, following his graduation trip itinerary, couldn't reach his parents after they left Hualien for Taitung. Despite his growing unease, he continued with his classmates, bound by the group's schedule. Then, on December 21st, in a Kaohsiung restaurant, a simple note delivered devastating news. Your mother has passed away. Please come to the morgue at Kaohsiung Left Wing Naval Hospital. The scene at the hospital was a nightmare come to life. Zuo Yi found his father and siblings already there, their faces marked by grief and confusion. Their desperate questions about their mother's fate met with Da Sheng's chilling response. Your mother was scalded by hot water and died from infection. His attempt to prevent them from viewing her body only intensified their suspicions. When they finally insisted on lifting the white sheet, the truth revealed itself in horrific detail. Their mother's body bore extensive burn marks everywhere except her head, telling a silent story of excruciating suffering. The clinical whites of the morgue contrasted sharply with the darkness of the questions forming in their minds, questions that would haunt them long after they left that sterile room. The timing was cruelly ironic. What should have been a celebration of their mother's birthday transformed into preparations for her funeral. The surprise party decorations their younger siblings had hidden away would never see the light of day, remaining as painful reminders of hope suddenly and violently extinguished. As the initial shock of their mother's death subsided, darker questions began to surface. What truly happened during what should have been a simple journey home? The truth, when it emerged, was more sinister than any of them could have imagined. Da Sheng's sudden return had been a carefully orchestrated trap, designed not only to exploit Fu Mei's family connections for money, but to orchestrate a fatal confrontation with Yue Gui. In Taitung, Yue Gui lay in wait. Her demands were as cruel as they were calculated. Fu Mei must secure 200,000 new Taiwan dollars, approximately 7,000 US dollars, from her aunt and relinquish her position as legal wife through divorce. For Fu Mei, whose entire identity was bound up in her family, such demands were impossible to accept. The morning of December 16th unfolded with horrific precision. Around 11 a.m., while staying at Da Sheng and Yue Gui's residence, Fu Mei prepared for what should have been a routine bath. As Yue Gui prepared the water, years of festering resentment erupted into violence. Taking advantage of Fume's blindness, her ultimate vulnerability, Yue Gui repeatedly doused her with boiling water. In the enclosed space, Fume's screams echoed off the walls as she begged for mercy. Unable to see her attacker or find escape, Yue Gui's assault continued until Fume collapsed, her skin ravaged by the scalding water. Only then did her tormentor call for medical help. The severity of the burns necessitated transfer from Taitung's limited facilities to Kaohsiung's naval hospital, but even their advanced care couldn't save Fume. On December 21st, after days of agony, she succumbed to sepsis and kidney failure. The brutality of the murder ignited fury in both Fume's family and her children. Their cause found an advocate in Fume's cousin, lawyer Li Yongran, who began methodically building a case against Yue Gui. But the most shocking betrayal was yet to come. Da Sheng, faced with his wife's murderer, chose to protect her. He not only financed Yue Gui's defense, but supported her fabricated story that Fume had accidentally scalded herself while bathing and that Yue Gui had heroically broken the bathroom window in a rescue attempt. Despite compelling counterarguments, Lin's eldest daughter testifying that her mother never took baths due to her blindness, lawyers demonstrating the physical impossibility of a 10-inch bath causing burns to 90% of the body, the lack of direct witnesses allowed Yue Gui to escape with a mere 7.5-year sentence for manslaughter. Yet, even this inadequate justice would be further eroded. Through a combination of appeals and Taiwan's special amnesty period, Yue Gui's sentence was reduced to just 3 years and 9 months, with the possibility of parole after serving only half that time. The mathematics of justice seemed cruel. A beloved mother's life valued at less than 2 years of imprisonment. Freedom came earlier than expected for Yue Ji, a mere 1 year and 10 months behind bars, shortened by what some might call fortune's cruel irony. More surprising still was Da Sheng's unwavering loyalty. He welcomed her back into his life as if the blood on her hands had somehow washed away. But for his children, there would be no such luxury of forgetting. The wounds of betrayal cut deeper when tragedy struck again. With their father's absence and their maternal grandparents' passing, the 6 siblings found themselves terribly alone. Extended family, who once shared festive meals and celebrated birthdays, now turned away, leaving empty chairs where support should have been. The burden of arranging their mother's funeral fell heavily on young shoulders that should never have carried such weight. Fate wasn't finished with its cruel dance. A predatory funeral director, sensing their vulnerability, swooped in like a vulture. He stripped away their modest savings with hollow promises and false sympathy. Their mother, who had once dreamed of a proper burial, was reduced to ashes in a simple cremation, another dignity denied by circumstance. Da Sheng became a ghost in his own right, appearing and disappearing like morning mist, always one step ahead of creditors. His children's needs became whispers lost in the wind of his obligations. The 6 siblings, haunted by fears of Yue Ji's revenge and the specter of homelessness, found refuge in the St. Path Children's Home in Tianmu District. The institution's walls, though cold, offered more protection than their father's promises. Despite their circumstances, Juoxian and Zoe's academic brilliance shone through the darkness. When prestigious Taipei schools opened their doors, the brothers made an unexpected choice. They followed their mother's footsteps to Hualien Teachers College. It wasn't just about free tuition and guaranteed employment. It was about honoring a legacy their mother had left behind, a thread connecting them to happier times. Their father maintained a tenuous connection, inviting them to stay at his home with Yue Ji during school breaks, given their proximity to Taitung. But what should have been moments of family reconnection became exercises in terror. Each night, the brothers lay rigid in their beds, ears straining for footsteps, imagining Yue Ji wielding the same deadly intent that had stolen their mother. The darkness held no comfort, only memories of loss. The fear eventually poisoned these visits, leading the brothers to gradually distance themselves. At Hualien Teachers College, they wore masks of normalcy. Their Tianmu address became an unintentional shield, leading classmates to assume wealth where there was only wound. Zhuoxian's frequent showers became legendary among peers, a quirk of the privileged, they thought. None suspected that the running water masked the sound of his grief, each droplet a tear he couldn't shed in public. Then came December 1988, when past and present collided in a newspaper headline that stopped their hearts. Woman throws baby from moving train after fight with boyfriend. The perpetrator's name jumped from the page like an accusation. UAG, their mother's killer, had struck again. The article revealed the bitter truth. Despite bearing Da Sheng's child, she had never achieved the status of legal wife she so desperately craved. The final scene played out like a horror story. On December 26th, fueled by 2 bottles of alcohol and years of festering resentment, UAG boarded a train at Taitung Station. Her 1-year-old son, innocent of his mother's demons, became the vessel for her rage. As the train hurtled through the night, she did the unthinkable. Opening the window, she released her grip on both her child and her humanity, letting darkness claim another victim. In the cold darkness of that December night, something in UAG finally broke through her alcoholic haze. Perhaps it was maternal instinct emerging too late, or the weight of her actions crushing through her rage. She stumbled off at Lewis Station, her feet carrying her straight to the police station, a confession spilling from her lips. But time, precious time, had already slipped away. 2 hours had passed since her child had vanished into the night. The rescue teams moved through the darkness with flashlights cutting through the 2 a.m. gloom. When they finally found the tiny body, it was a miracle wrapped in tragedy. Tall grass near a tunnel exit had caught the child like a natural cradle, preventing a fatal tumble down the steep slope. But 4 hours had passed, 4 hours of exposure to the bitter 50-degree winter night, 4 hours since the violent impact of the fall. Those hours would exact their permanent toll. The child survived, but fate extracted its price in brain damage and moderate intellectual disability. Yet once again, justice seemed to bow before UAG's circumstances. Her voluntary surrender and the child's survival became her shield, and she walked free. By 1991, she achieved her long-coveted prize. Da Sheng made her his wife, legitimizing what had begun in betrayal and blood. Life moved forward for the siblings. The brothers found their footing as teachers in Taipei, while all 6 siblings eventually married. They built walls around their past, never speaking of it, not to their spouses, not to their children. The pain became a secret inheritance passed down in silence and careful omissions, but the past refused to stay buried. On July 17, 2003, it waited at Zhuoxian's doorstep in a form he barely recognized. The sight struck him like a physical blow. His once proud father, now a diminished figure in a wheelchair, wrapped in nothing but a thin blanket. Da Sheng's body told a story of abuse through its wounds, some fresh, others telling tales of long-term suffering. A deep gash crossed his head like an angry signature. Below, the wheelchair had become a throne of misery, soiled with human waste, while the summer heat amplified the stench of neglect into something almost visible. Zhuoxian's 4-year-old daughter's tears cut through the moment, her innocent fear of the stranger grandfather piercing his heart. With practiced efficiency born of old trauma, he quickly shepherded his family upstairs, protecting them from this ghost of his past while reaching for his phone to call both his brother Zoe and emergency services. In the sterile confines of the ambulance, the brothers sat beside their father's broken form, 1,000 questions crowding their throats. The heroic figure of their childhood memories, the man who once seemed to touch the sky, had collapsed into this fragile shell. How had he found them? How long had he waited, suffering in the summer heat? But when they finally spoke, it was with one simple, devastating question. Did she beat you? Their fathers whispered yes, carried the weight of years of abuse and regret. At the hospital, doctors worked to repair the physical damage, stitching the head wound even as they discovered the deeper trauma, a stroke born of repeated blows requiring extended care. In a final act of filial piety that their father perhaps never deserved, Zhuoxian and Zuoyi stepped forward. They covered the mounting medical bills, secured a protection order against UAG, and found a quality nursing home for their father's care. It was an offering of forgiveness their father seemed unable to recognize or appreciate, one last twist in their family's tragic tale. The empty bed in the nursing home spoke volumes. When the brothers arrived for their regular visit, the staff's explanation felt like another betrayal. Da Sheng had gathered his few possessions and walked away 2 days earlier. Whether it was his recovered strength or the magnetic pull of UAG that drew him back, he had left without a word of gratitude or goodbye. After all their efforts at reconciliation, This silent departure cut deep. The brothers, weary of chasing ghosts, decided to let him go, offering only quiet prayers for his peace wherever he might land. Life settled into familiar rhythms for a year. Then came Saturday, November 13th, 2004. Zhuoxian was preparing for a school anniversary celebration, the morning unfolding with ordinary promise until the phone shattered their peace. His wife answered first, her angry dismissal of what she thought was a scammer providing one last moment of normal life before everything changed again. When the phone rang a second time, Zhuoxian answered. The voice on the other end delivered news that stopped his heart. His father was dead. The morgue at Asia Eastern Hospital waited for him. After verifying the caller's credentials from Haishan Police Station, the brothers split their duties. Zhuoxian to identify the body, Zhuoyi to handle the bureaucracy of death at the police station. At the morgue, something in the staff's demeanor triggered a haunting sense of déjà vu. Their attempts to prevent him from viewing the body echoed that day years ago with his mother. Just as then, Zhuoxian pushed past their warnings, reaching for the white sheet. What lay beneath would haunt his dreams forever. His father's head, a canvas of open wounds, his body drained of life and blood, a horror beyond words or reason. The truth that emerged painted a picture of sustained misery. Yueji's dream of wealth through marriage had crumbled against the reality of Da Sheng's continued financial failures since 1984. Their life together had descended into endless arguments over money, each yuan a battlefield. Her desperation had led to theft at a hotel in April 2004, earning her a 2-year, 7-month sentence she never served, choosing instead to become a fugitive. The final act played out at 1:50 a.m. on October 13th, 2004. Da Sheng confronted his wife about drinking away their meager savings, a conversation that ignited her alcohol-fueled rage. Their mentally disabled son became the sole witness to what followed. First came the ashtray, hurled with hatred, then the electric rice cooker, wielded as a weapon against Da Sheng's defenseless head. His body, already weakened by years of abuse, offered no resistance. But Yueji wasn't finished. Grabbing a medicinal wine bottle, her scream of "Die!" pierced the night as she continued her assault until Da Sheng lay unconscious. Their son, trapped between his cognitive limitations and terror of his mother's fury, could only watch as she finally collapsed in her rattan chair, drunk and spent. Only then, with his father barely clinging to life and his mother unconscious, did he find the courage to descend the stairs and seek help from a public phone. When Da Sheng arrived at the hospital, death had already staked its claim. The medical report read like a catalog of horror. Multiple head wounds, a fractured skull, internal bleeding. It wasn't just the injuries that killed him. It was time, those precious hours lost while blood seeped away, each minute taking him further from survival. The crime scene told its own brutal story. Police found a tableau of violence. The rice cooker lay in pieces, its fragments scattered like evidence of rage. Blood had marked a macabre trail down the stairs, while Yueji slumbered in her chair, oblivious to the havoc she'd wreaked. Her clothes were a canvas of crimson, and her blood alcohol level, 0.77 milligrams per milliliter, spoke of deep intoxication. At the police station, as sobriety crept in, Yueji began weaving her web of excuses. First came the tale of Da Sheng's supposed suicide wish, allegedly driven by chronic gout pain. When that story crumbled under its own absurdity, she pivoted to a more sinister narrative, blaming their mentally disabled son. She even orchestrated her mother's testimony about the son's supposedly unfilial behavior, a desperate attempt to shift guilt onto an innocent victim. But the truth emerged through careful police investigation and crime scene reenactments, with the son laying bare Yueji's guilt. Faced with overwhelming evidence, she admitted to the rice cooker attack, though she denied wielding the wine bottle or screaming "Die" during her assault. The woman who had left a trail of destruction, 2 lives taken, a baby thrown from a moving train, now faced capital punishment. Yet the justice system showed unexpected mercy. The judge, weighing her intellectual limitations, poor learning capacity, and the mental deterioration from chronic alcoholism, reduced her sentence to 14 years with mandatory psychiatric treatment. The verdict sent shockwaves through society and Da Sheng's family, but fate had its own sentence in mind. Before her next court appearance, Yueji died in detention, her illness providing a final escape from earthly justice. The orchestrator of two families' destruction had made her exit, but the shadow she cast remained. For Da Sheng and Fu Mei's 6 children, life became an exercise in endurance. Having barely healed from their mother's murder, they now faced their father's brutal death at the same hands 2 decades later. But tragedy wasn't finished with them, particularly Zhuoxian. The media, hungry for controversy, turned their lens on the eldest son. His seemingly detached response to his father's death became fodder for public criticism. They painted him as unfilial, suggesting his abandonment had paved the way for tragedy. His fitness as an educator came under scrutiny, and his promising career trajectory, including his candidacy for school principal, began to derail. Anonymous letters began arriving at both his school and home, each one a paper bullet aimed at his character. The cruel irony crushed him. Both parents murdered by the same person, yet society cast him as the villain. As his professional life crumbled under the weight of public misconception, dark thoughts began to surface. He contemplated ending it all, the final victim in a tragedy that had spanned 20 years. In the depths of his despair, Zhuoxian made a decision that would change everything, to break the silence that had shrouded his family's tragedy for decades. As he began sharing their story with reporters, the harsh judgment of society transformed into waves of sympathy and support. The truth, in all its raw pain and triumph, resonated with people in ways he never expected. His sisters, too, refused to let their family tragedy become their defining narrative. Each carved out their own path to success, their achievements standing as testament to their resilience. One became a renowned educator, another excelled in business, while others found their calling in various professions. Their individual successes painted a collective portrait of triumph over adversity. The power of their story caught the attention of Dai Television, who adapted it into the film We Six. The title itself spoke volumes, not a story of victims, but of siblings bound by both blood and shared pain who chose to rise together rather than fall apart. The film served as more than entertainment. It became a beacon of hope for others wrestling with their own demons, a reminder that family bonds can survive even the most devastating storms. Through their journey, the 6 siblings demonstrated a profound truth. Happiness isn't a gift bestowed by fate, but a choice made daily, often in the face of overwhelming odds. Their story stands as both warning and inspiration, a cautionary tale about the devastating price of greed and betrayal, but also a testament to the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. Perhaps the most powerful lesson lies not in the tragedy itself, but in what came after. These 6 children, who watched their families shatter twice at the hands of the same person, refused to let those broken pieces define them. Instead, they gathered those fragments and built something new: successful careers, loving families, and lives worth celebrating. Their legacy isn't one of victimhood, but of victory. They proved that while we cannot choose the chapters life writes for us, we can always choose how we respond to them. Every morning, they chose to rise, to work, to love, to live, not despite their past, but with it woven into the fabric of who they became. And so this case, heavy with its lessons about human nature's darkest and brightest aspects, reminds us that no shadow, no matter how long or dark, can permanently eclipse the light of human determination. The 6 siblings didn't just survive their story, they rewrote it, showing us all that the final chapter of any life story lies not in what happens to us, but in what we choose to do next. Their story continues to inspire others through various media channels, inviting viewers to reflect on their own capacity for resilience and growth. For those interested in learning more about similar cases of triumph over tragedy, please consider following our channel and joining the discussion in the comments below.